Hey, what's up guys? Tyler here with Secure Team. So for those of you who may be new to the UFO or alien research topic, I just want to give you a little background on the interview that you're about to see. Now, both of the gentlemen you'll see in this interview have done great things for the UFO research community and topic. The first of which is Darcy Weir, a documentary filmmaker and producer of many UFO-related films. And the other is someone that many have considered to be a YouTube UFO research legend. And the fact that no one has heard from this man in nearly 10 years or more, since both he and his YouTube channel vanished from the platform. And his name is Cary, or as you may know him better as his YouTube handle, Luna Cognita. And so who is Luna Cognita? Well, Luna Cognita was a gentleman who over 10 years ago started a YouTube channel solely based on analyzing NASA space mission film and video footage and finding such things as UFOs, strange activity, and massive structures caught on the moon during the moon landings, just to name a few. He had between 20 and 30 videos on his channel and was beginning to gain many thousands of subscribers as the years went on, posting amazing video analysis of UFOs and unknown objects caught in official NASA Apollo moon footage. And then he went silent, and for years his channel sat dormant on YouTube. No one knew what had happened to him, why he had stopped making videos so suddenly, and whether he was even still alive. Then, sometime around 2017, YouTube out of nowhere terminated his channel altogether, and without reason. And so, through a lucky turn of events, I was able to link up with the film director Darcy Weir, who just so happened to be close friends with Luna Cognita. And we were subsequently able to set this interview up. Now, I must let you know that due to the events and health issues that Luna Cognita sustained and went through during his time missing, he will only be doing voice chat for this interview while Darcy and I will be on video. But I just want to say, to be able to finally sit down and speak with a man whose videos literally got me into studying this topic to begin with, a true legend in my view, and to find out what happened to him and his channel and the mysterious and truly sad circumstances around it, in the end, it's truly an honor to be able to speak with this gentleman, both of these gentlemen. So without further ado, let's get into the interview. All right, guys, so we are here with Darcy Weir, the film director, producer, a man of many talents, as well as the well-known Luna Cognita. His real name is Cary Martinuk, the gentleman who you've seen much of his footage in my videos over these past years. He was a YouTuber himself. He mysteriously vanished a while back. Nobody knows what happened. This is the first time I'm speaking with him. I met him through Mr. Weir here, Darcy, who you're seeing above, and we're just going to go ahead and jump into it. So, Darcy, if you'd like to start, just maybe give a little bit of background of what you do, what you've done, and what your goal is here as it regards to the UFO community.
Cool. Yeah. So, you know, I've been a filmmaker for about 10 years now. I started my journey in filmmaking back in 2010, and I published a free YouTube documentary back in 2012 that, you know, had 1 million views and stuff like that. It was called The Underground, and it was about Phil Schneider.
Right.
Phil Schneider is this very polarizing character. A lot of people have heard of him in the UFO community. He's definitely not credible in terms of his story of getting into a battle underground with aliens. But the documentary really highlights the interesting perspectives about underground bases and the fact that these probably exist. And, you know, Richard Dolan was in it, and so was Richard Sauter. Richard Sauter's written 4 books on underground bases, and he's a really interesting guy. I think the fantastic thing about Richard Sauder, which is very similar to the talent that Luna Cognita has, which is Carrie Martinuk, who we had with us tonight, was the ability to pour through declassified documents at government repositories or through online access, and to pour through video or film evidence, and to pour through picture evidence of certain things that have been going on in history. And with the Phil Schneider sort of underground base documentary, Richard Sauder, he went through every document that could prove without a doubt that the American military industrial complex was fully vested in building underground bases for possible reasons to house exotic technologies. That stuff is where it gets very, we can only speculate.
And for those of you who don't know, real quick, who Phil Schneider is, who this man's talking about, I've done a few videos. It's been years since I did a video on Phil Schneider, but to put it in a nutshell, Phil Schneider was a man who said that he was doing contract work for the government. He was drilling down, drilling a cave down underground, came upon an underground alien base in which a firefight ensued. He was known to do many UFO conferences where he would show up, show his scars where he was hit by these so-called aliens, laser beams, whatnot, and he was eventually found passed away of some very, in my opinion, suspicious circumstances a few months after his last UFO conference appearance. So I'll give you guys some links down below if you want to learn more about Phil Schneider. So you made your first film about Phil Schneider, and then you worked with Luna Cognita, or Carrie here, on your film Secret Space UFOs Part 1, which I actually just watched, and it's totally mind-blowing. The work you did, the editing, the history at the very beginning, where it kind of gives you the background for those of you who don't know, but then it just hits you with Luna's work of analyzing this Apollo moon footage and this imagery, and discovering UFOs in it and secret moonwalks that they said didn't occur. And I want to ask you, Carrie, Luna, if I may call you. I may switch back and forth here and there, but can I ask just to start, what kind of piqued your interest into even looking into the whole UFO phenomena, and what got you into looking into Apollo and all these things?
Well, sure. I've always been a very big space fan, like so many people out there are. And I began looking into the Apollo program because that was before I was born, that it had happened. And I want to make it clear, too, that I'm not a Apollo or moonwalk denier.
And neither am
like some people out there.
Right. I believe we went, but we had to cover things up that we saw there.
Well said, exactly. And I got into that by doing my research on the Apollo program, and began starting from day one, really, of everything to do with Apollo, and kind of just crawling through all of the data.
And did you kind of figure out right away that they were hiding things, or did it take you a while and you kind of stumbled onto something, or was it basically apparent from pretty much the get-go that something wasn't right. They were hiding something when they went to the moon.
Yeah, it became apparent very early on that as I was looking at the images and audio from the moonwalks that took place, and it just, I was basically beginning looking at it in an effort to debunk the people who are saying we never went to the moon.
Right, and I started out when you were one of the very first people who got me. It was actually moon or lunar anomalies, whatever you want to call them, that got me into doing this research, and that has now made this channel the biggest on YouTube when it comes to studying of UFOs, the moon, anomalies, what have you. And originally I watched all of the Bart Sibrel documentaries and all of these moon hoax, and it had me convinced that we did not go to the moon. Little did I know how naive I was, and how those documentaries were later all debunked, and that there is more than enough footage to prove that we did go. But there's also evidence of, as you've shown on your now gone YouTube channel, which we'll get to in just a second, you've shown and proven that they have manipulated photos. I don't know if they've faked entire photos, but we know from your work they've at least manipulated them. Would you say that's accurate? Trying to cover something up?
Absolutely. And that was kind of the thing that got me going in the direction that I went as Luna Cognita, when I began going through all the photographs and the traverses, the moonwalk traverses they did.
Right.
And there were, just as I began examining digitally with like Photoshop some of these images, and began stumbling across issues of photos being cropped out and things like that had different crop.
Right.
portions.
And wasn't it back then, they didn't really have things like Photoshop. They had to like airbrush out things or paint things out, and they didn't count on things like Photoshop being around later on. So they thought they were in the clear.
Exactly.
And then
Right.
and then you have these images where they just put a piece of duct tape over it so you can't see it. You do a wonderful job of going through what I'm sure amount to thousands upon thousands of pages of Apollo transcripts, and finding these little tidbits where they're on the moon or they're above the moon, and they are talking about seeing lights down on the surface. And the great thing about your channel,
thing they were talking about in the, because I've read every Apollo transcript, and really dug into that, and then began seeing them talking about anomalies that were watching them from above.
Right, looks like we've had visitors again. Yeah, I love that clip.
Yeah, Edgar Mitchell, Dr. Edgar Mitchell.
Yeah, agree. Well, see, that's what a lot of people try to get me with. Well, Tyler, if they didn't fake the moon landings, then why do Buzz and Aldrin and all of them look so sad and pissed off during the press conference when they got back? It's because they faked it. And I said, no, I think they're upset because they were told not to talk about what they saw. Would you think that's a fair assessment of why they have such strange behavior?
Yeah, things like that, their behavior factor it was just like you said, it sets a little bell off in your head where you're kind of like, it left you with the impression that they're not talking about everything here. They're watching their words too carefully.
Well, let's see, we've had visitors again. Yeah. Let's see.
Right, they're looking at each other, they're watching, yeah, you can tell they're very, it's like they, and you know, I've mentioned this on the channel before where Neil Armstrong, before he died, in one of the very few interviews he gave, he said, what, I don't know the direct quote, but he said something along the lines of, there are great things in space that, you know, unexplored or unknown or undiscovered. If only we could get through one of truth's protective layers. And I'm thinking that,
yeah, I think it was a lecture at MIT, and he was telling the student body this in his speech. Yeah, that was one of his cryptic speeches that proves exactly that he knew something that he was not allowed to talk about, and that's quite often the case with these astronauts.
And I was upset so much about the fact that NASA was always using the excuse that they can talk about everything and we're not covering anything up.
Oh yeah, we know that's a lie.
And then as soon as I was discovering the crops and things coming out,
right. Well,
and
can I ask
not being able to get answers from NASA too when I queried them about.
So did you start the YouTube channel as basically a hobby, or, you know, just to get the truth out basically? Because I know people are dying to know, because I posted a video about you and they were like, oh my God, Luna is still alive. What happened to his channel? Could you maybe briefly explain what happened?
Sure. Well, with me, from my perspective, I few years back ago, had a really bad car accident with a head injury. Mm-hmm. And that led to, I guess, 5 strokes they've counted now that I've had.
Wow.
And that was, as many people know, with a stroke, we're talking some serious issues with my head.
Right.
And thought process and things like that. And that made it, to me, very difficult to...
I can understand, sir.
Put together new videos and things.
And so that's when you stopped, basically, making videos suddenly.
Yeah.
So we got that. Okay. So, you know, we can rule out that the Men in Black took you out. And I'm so sorry to hear what you went through. Now, at one point, your channel goes down completely. Do you know what happened there?
No. That was one of the things that was so weird, was when I got notified by someone by email asking me, hey, what happened to your channel? And I ended up having to contact YouTube and say, what happened to my channel here?
Right.
And they really had no answer or anything.
We tried to recover it for like half a year, remember? We were trying to log into it and using whatever passwords you could remember or you wrote down.
Well, I mean,
nothing.
I don't know if it was if it was a feeling I had, but years ago I was just like, the videos you had, and it was only like 15 or 20 videos, I downloaded all of them because I felt like something was going to happen, because your evidence was so mind-blowing. And to me, I was scared for you because of the things that you were analyzing and discovering, and there was no money behind it. There was no reason.
Right.
You were just putting it out there, and they took you down.
I could say one of the mistakes I know I made was I never monetized the channel either, because the number of views he was
Right.
getting.
Well, you know what?
Could have been a millionaire.
That just proves what a classy. That just shows your character of how much you wanted to get to the truth. And I started. But yeah, you'd probably be a millionaire by now. That's for sure. But then you hook up with Darcy, right? Darcy, how did that come about?
Well, I had also been a fan of Luna's for a long, long time. And back in 2017, I released a documentary called Beyond the Spectrum, which was just like a shorter doc about NASA testing out far light, ultraviolet cameras out in space and recording space anomalies above Earth orbit. I interviewed some cool guys for that, and I always wanted to know who this guy, Luna Cognita, really was. And I emailed him a couple times, couldn't get through, because after he had his strokes, he lost his memory. He couldn't remember like any of his passwords, couldn't remember like a lot of crucial details. So his email that he had on his Facebook was defunct. Like, I was basically sending an email to no one. And I did a bit of detective work, and I looked up online, what area he might be living in. I'm Canadian, and I found out that Kerry is also Canadian. He's been living in Ontario all these years, which is where I'm from. Mm-hmm. And I basically sleuthed out where his town was that he was living in. At one point, I think he was were you living in Barrie or something like that when you were writing articles for that motorbike magazine, Kerry?
Mississauga area, and as well as Barrie as well. I moved there too.
Right. So I had seen that he had written an article for a sports bike magazine back probably about 10 years ago now. And I was like, oh, is this really the same guy? So I started looking up all kinds of news and stuff, and I had found out that recently, Kerry, last year, his stepdad had passed away, which is really tragic. And I called the funeral home, and I spoke to them, and they said, well, you can give your condolences to the family. I spoke to Kerry's mom, and I said, I've been trying to get a hold of Kerry for years now. Is he around? Yeah. And then she said, well, here's his phone number, give him a call. And I called him up. We had this conversation. We became fast friends. And I said, look, man, your stuff is no longer around, and I would love to work on this documentary series with you. I think you put together some of the best secret space information that's ever been brought out. And he said, yeah, let's do this. I'd love to work with you. And so I started sending him some cuts and stuff, and I sent him the final version of the doc. He loved it. And
I was so impressed with it that I realized, okay, this guy, Darcy Weir, is in the same frame of mind as I was in terms of wanting to approach this logically and based on the evidence
right and
that we had available.
He's a smart cookie, isn't he?
Yeah.
As I've gotten to know from speaking with him lately. Did you know what a legend you were and still are on YouTube, Kerry?
No, I mean, I knew I had a big fan base.
Right.
but I knew that there were also lots of problems with people that were putting out false stuff about me.
Right. That goes with it, and you don't know if it's coming from regular people or the government or who it is, because they're monitoring us all. I mean, the UFO topic is the biggest topic in the world right now. Carrie, do you... And by the way, real quick, as Darcy was saying, you did this film, Secret Space UFOs Part 1. Kelly and I just watched it, and it's an amazing film. If you guys, because his channel's no longer there, and hopefully maybe we can get a channel up again and get all of his videos back up, but if you guys want to see like a documentary that just goes straight into the imagery and the footage of what NASA hid on the moon, check out this film. I brought it up in a video earlier in the week. But Carrie, do you have any opinion? I've been very, I don't know what the word would be, suspicious of everything that's going on lately with the Pentagon leaks and this Elizondo guy. Have you been following that at all? And do you have any opinions on it? I think it's a big ruse, but that just may be me. But something just doesn't seem right.
I agree. It's kind of almost their counterintelligence plan, where they're realizing how big the story is and how much evidence is out there that people have been presenting, and that they have to then suddenly come up with trying to cover things up in ways, but they failed quite miserably at doing so. I think there's a lot of stories, and I mean, when they're sitting there talking about things like swamp gas causing these people to hallucinate.
Yeah, that's an old one.
Hearing crazy explanations.
Well, plus the footage that was leaked, it shows basically nothing. It's almost like they're trying to put footage out there that will later be debunked and make UFO people look crazier than they tried to make them look before. And I keep saying this over and over, and it's like they're all over CNN, they're all over the mainstream, almost trying to get people to say, okay, UFOs probably exist, we can stop looking into it. But I say no. This is a ruse. People should not stop looking into it. And your work and Darcy's is a perfect example of that. Okay, so at this point, Luna Cognita started to glitch out and have broadcasting issues during the interview. And it just so happened that this glitching, and he was actually disconnected from the interview, it happened just as we were talking about somehow getting his videos back onto YouTube. Very strange. Could have been an accident, could have been the Men in Black, who knows. But in between this small break, before we connect back with Luna, here is a clip of the upcoming film that Darcy and now I, myself, are working on together about the infamous TR-3B UFO. And what you're going to see here is just a little sneak peek of what Darcy has done so far. I am not in it yet, as I have just now entered, and will be working on the rest of the film with him. So check this out.
Replicated alien tech. In terms of, like the legendary ARV, the Alien Reproduction Vehicle. Did we actually make that, and has that gone throughout the solar system? But we don't have proof of these things, but we have our stories, and some of them are pretty darn interesting, and some of them are maybe believable to those of us who've looked into it. But we're in an area of what I would say making informed speculation based on genuine knowledge that we have, but we don't have the full picture. So we get some information and, at least at this point, make some inferences and maybe put together some interesting hypotheses about what's going on.
quick. You know, as I said in a live stream, I was on an interview recently. I said, you know, back in the day, I was very naive. I used to promote any film that was put in front of me. Nowadays, I realize that there are a lot of people in this business just want to make money. Half of it's nonsense, and I said I'm only from now on going to promote films and people I believe in. And as God is my witness, if there's two people I believe in, it's Darcy and Carrie, or Luna Cognito, however you want to call him. I watched the film myself. It features Luna Cognito's work, his amazing analysis of what was on the moon, how they tried to cover it up. Darcy did a great job of editing that film and adding more things to it. So I would say rent it, watch it, check it out. And, you know, Darcy, I mean, you know, are there any plans for you and Luna to do anything in the future? I know that you and I are working on an upcoming movie regarding TR3Bs, but Luna, are you basically just are you just taking it easy? You know, maybe you could what's the word I'm looking for? Where you can help and give information without having to do too much hard work.
Absolutely, I'm 100% into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the plans that Luna and I have for this next set of documentaries that we're going to be releasing, he's going to be sending me a hard drive with all of the documentation that he downloaded and deciphered throughout the whole making of the Luna Cognita productions that were on YouTube.
And that hard drive you sent me, my friend. So,
yeah.
And that power cable.
Beautiful.
Okay.
So
everything
we're almost there.
Yeah, you'll have access to.
Can I get a copy of that quick?
I
I'd love to see what's on there.
We'll go through it together, Tyler. I promise.
Yeah.
Don't worry. But yeah, you know, it's interesting because Carrie has had a history in working with filmmakers, and he actually worked with Jose Escamilla back in 2009. They worked on this documentary called UFO, The Greatest Story Ever Denied 2,
Right.
Moon Rising. Kind of a big name.
Yeah.
I think Gaia or something bought that since Jose had passed away. But, you know, the funny thing is when I watched that documentary back in 2009, I was like, this guy knows his stuff. You know, and that was a younger version of Carrie. And if people want to see that version of him, I'm sure they can find the documentary pretty easily somewhere online. But Carrie and I have become friends, and we talk about everything that he's done in the past. And he even says, like, that documentary had great promise. It started with a lot of great ideas, but then it starts to go into the like painting of the moon and colorizing the moon. And that really kind of debunks itself. And unfortunately, it starts taking away from all the momentum that they build at the starting of the documentary. And so
I ceased promoting anything that Jose was doing after that movie, Moon Rising. Because in Moon Rising, he actually ended up sending a camera crew to my house to film me in that and interview me for that documentary that he called it. But then he began going off on these tangents of doing things that were the exact opposite of what I was doing, where I'm showing you, here's the exact photo and here's the frame number. You can look at it yourself and do this. And Jose began going off on his own little spiels about different things that he was asking me at a couple points to get involved in some of the projects with him, like the ones dealing with the rods.
Oh yeah, rods.
Yeah,
I used to
rods.
make videos on rods, and they turned out to be bugs flying by. Just to jump off real quick and switch back to the moon. You know, this could be a two-parter. You know, either of you could answer this, but I'll start with Luna or Carrie. I'm sorry. I've called you Luna for so many years I can't get it out of my head.
That works for me.
Do you think that astronauts are ever going to talk about what they've seen, or do you think that they are just so scared because they've been told not to talk or bad things are going to happen? Now, I know they've dropped hints, but do you ever really think the government or astronauts are going to come out and tell us what they really saw or know?
Well, I know that one of the biggest concerns that NASA has about the astronauts, not just the Apollo astronauts either, any of the programs,
Right.
talking about this stuff, is the concept of deathbed confessions,
Right.
where if they know that they're going to pass away or something, they can begin at that point. They realize that
They have
there's
nothing to
nothing
lose.
the government,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
government can't hurt me or my family for this.
It's sad that
And
it has
that-
to come to that. It really is.
Exactly, and that's really where it came to and began a lot, because these guys, these heroes, they all were the Apollo astronauts that made the ultimate journey of lifetime
Right.
to the moon and walked up there
Yeah.
and living so many people's dreams. They got to accomplish that.
Well, you know
And-
what? The great thing is that even though it's unlikely they'll unless it's on their deathbed, it's unlikely they'll ever say anything. Thankfully, NASA could not edit out or airbrush every single photograph, and there are so many videos and imagery from Mars, the moon, the spacewalks, the space shuttles that they didn't catch. They tried to cut the feed, but they were too late. And now it's out there. I've got it on my channel. Darcy is doing documentaries about it. And I think, you know, Darcy, what are your thoughts about, I mean, my thoughts on this whole Pentagon leak thing is the people that perpetuated this 70-year cover-up are not suddenly going to come out and give us the truth. And really they didn't, because they put out a report that said nothing. We've got Jeremy Corbell, who's got footage out there. We don't know what it's from. Yes, the Pentagon confirmed that it came from a serviceman, but they didn't confirm it was alien. So do you think it's going to be up to people like us to really finally just get the truth out?
I think anybody who is a researcher of this phenomenon has enough information to go off of that they shouldn't trust everything that's coming out of mass media and, the government. But at the same time, the research community, like us, everybody's kind of, there's a lot of infighting, right? And
That's for sure.
there's folks that stand up and say, I know the truth and the only truth. And those are the ones that you really have to be careful of, because I think time will always end up telling the full truth and the whole truth, because it eventually comes out. When you lie, when you do something that's scandalous and really don't know what you're talking about, after time that will reveal itself.
Right.
And I think right now we have lots of examples of that type of behavior with this whole disclosure movement.
Yeah.
And there's people that want to rule the narrative. There's people that have come forward that say, all of this is false flag, all of this is our craft, and
Nobody knows better than the other. None of us know.
No one really knows, and I've spoken to a really good, UFO researcher, and it's been passed to him by another researcher, and the saying is, even if you have really good data and you feel like you understand the picture that you're looking at, you probably, in this UFO research field, only have maybe one or two pieces to the puzzle. And this is 100 pieces. So if you have one or two pieces, you really don't know the full picture. And it's full of so much speculation. And sometimes the speculation is fun. Sometimes the speculation could make a really good sci-fi movie, because that's pretty much as good as it gets. And sometimes the speculation is like Occam's razor. It's the simplest explanation.
Right, and
some of the craft is definitely ours, but I still believe fervently that we're not alone in the universe. We have been visited, and a lot of the early Apollo missions show that there's UFOs tracking our outer space endeavors. And I don't think we had TR-3Bs then. I don't think we had the ARV then. I don't think we had anything close to the capabilities that were exhibited in the Apollo era or Gemini, Mercury space programs. Like, there's no way. And the X-15, which is the very starting of it all.
There's just too much footage out there, and it keeps coming, and as long as people have cameras, they're going to catch this stuff. I just got a new night vision camera, and I'm looking to catch stuff, and I've looked at, we put the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter up there. Reconnaissance is a military term, people. We put a reconnaissance orbiter around Mars. These are military terms. We know things are there, from monoliths to bases, to whatever you want to call it. And I think that's why people love my channel, is because, like some others who like to put out films and make millions of dollars and say, I know the truth, here's what it is, I just say, here guys, take a look, tell me what you think down below, and let's rock and roll, and we'll do another video as soon as I have more. Make up your own mind, because that's all you can do at the end of the day.
I love the way you put that. That's exactly my mindset too. Just that idea of,
and I can tell you guys listening and watching this for a fact that there was no payment for this interview or promotion fee for me promoting this film or Luna. This is a true honor, and I like to think that I've made good friends with Darcy, and I'm just getting to know Carrie here, and they're lovely people. And like I said, I'm going to be working with Darcy on a film that's coming on the TR-3B. And look, all three of us, Luna is going to be there as a what do they call it, Darcy? A consultant. Because he has done the real work, better analysis than I could ever do, or I think anyone in this field has ever done. He's going to be a consultant. I think the three of us can do big things together and get these other dinosaurs out here who are doing it for the money and the money only out of the picture. We can finally get closer to the truth, and I hope we can all do that together, because this has been a real honor to talk to both of you.
For sure. I mean, there's all kinds of YouTube channels that are out there that cover the UFO subject, and what I like about yours is that, if you find out something CGI or you put up CGI in the past, you kind of get out there, delete it.
No one's perfect, but yeah, there's people out here who do it daily, and it's just like, no one's perfect. But that's part of this mysterious journey we're on. Not everything's going to be legit. Not everything's good. Sometimes it may well be swamp gas bouncing off of Venus. Who knows? But a lot of it will not be. And that is a fact. And you can find that out just from watching the film that Darcy and Carrie did together. and the upcoming film that I'm working on with them, and it's going to be awesome, man. So is there anything I've left out here? I mean, it's just been an honor to talk to you both.
No, man. I mean, you ask away if there's any other questions you had.
Luna, Carrie, if you had a message to the other researchers out there, who want to do the same research on NASA like you did, what would you tell them? Any tips that you would give them?
The biggest tip I would give them is you better be prepared to set aside one hell of a lot of time and get ready to do a lot of reading and researching the depth of the programs
right
that NASA had going on, and looking at all the footage and analyzing it. And
it's very time consuming, but also very addicting, going down that rabbit hole.
That's exactly it.
I loved about what Luna or Carrie put together in the past, and you'll see that in the documentary we got out. And I even extended some segments where there is a lot of reading, because I expect people to watch the film and almost feel like they're being pulled into a book. They're reading into the history. And I really like that he wrote so much in his productions, like literally just big paragraphs of information talking about the space programs and certain, missions that happened in Apollo or Gemini or what have you. And a lot of the writing that I did in between some of those segments has to connect up with that historically. I went through chronologically from the starting of the space program to, the end of the Apollo space program. And I like to do that in the documentaries that I produce. I want to sort of go through things historically to build context.
Exactly. That's exactly what it needs.
And you don't see many documentaries in this research field where you have tons of reading that you have to do. And some people won't like it. Some people will watch this documentary and be like, whoa, I'm getting bored or something. But for me, when I watch these segments and I'm reading, the transcripts from Apollo 8 or Apollo, it just
interesting.
It sucks me in. It takes me out of my body. It just makes me feel like I'm there and I'm seeing what the astronauts are seeing, and your imagination really kicks in. And you gotta understand that astronauts are not stupid people. These are experts at the time in flight. Most of them were excellent pilots, so they were the top of their field. They were pulled into the program because they were physically fit. They were extremely intelligent. They had very fast reflexes and really quick judgment. That's exactly what you needed in order to complete a mission to the moon and back to Earth. And these guys,
the fact that they were military.
Yes, they're military,
and had class and were in the classified field.
They do as they're told. They know how to follow orders and keep quiet when they're told.
Exactly. So you got to understand that is perfect for compartmentalizing all of the data that they're picking up when they go to the moon and flying in the cis void in between Earth and the moon. When they're there and they're looking out portholes in the lunar capsule, they're able to see things, and they're trained to react a certain way, like a personnel from the military should, to keep things hush-hush. Right. And that's why the secrets have stayed secret for so long, because they understand what it is to break that law, to leak classified information. They're not going to do that. This is also a different era. This is where people were competing from Russia with the United States. And because there was a Cold War going on, there was an even greater effort to keep things secret, to keep the tight lid on what was going on out there. And so what I was saying before, I kind of went off course here, is when you're reading these transcripts and you see that the pilots, these astronauts, are seeing something on the moon, and they're speaking up at this point saying, what is that? Or it looks like this and it's following us or whatever. Your
Santa
mind
Claus
perks
is
up.
real.
Yeah, there is a Santa Claus. You know, when you see these things, you realize that these are highly intelligent people and they're not going to waste time. They're not going to say something out of turn. They're not going to bring up something unless it's really alarmed them. And there is something interesting or curious happening outside of their capsule.
Right.
And most of that alludes to... Sorry?
A lot of that was so heavily covered up
And
in terms of using... there's one in one of my videos, I believe I put the paragraph where they were talking about, are you holding his cue cards up to read over the radio?
Right, they had these pre-written scripts to read.
Exactly.
Like, talk about the lunar dust and how it looks like. Before they had even gotten to the moon, they had already had pre-scripted lines of what they were going to say the moon dust looked like. Before they had ever stepped foot on it and stuff like that.
That's right, yeah.
Well, it's to keep them from saying what they really were seeing.
Right.
You know, it's to keep the whole mission within a certain confine so that the public doesn't know what's going on. And NASA's been doing this since the beginning. What would make people think that has changed at all in recent years?
Right.
And nothing has changed. They still follow the same practices of covering up any video footage that may be showing UFOs, you know, around Earth orbit from the ISS missions, the STS missions. It's all there. You know, you can see the behavior. It doesn't take a you know, very, very intelligent person to realize that there's a cover-up even happening today.
Right.
But it had to start from somewhere. And in this documentary, we're trying to say, here's the foundation. Here's some laws that possibly some executive orders and the Brookings report that were put into place that helped as a foundation for the military-industrial complex to legally classify certain stuff from the public. And then here's what happened on every mission we went into space since the beginning. UFOs, moon anomalies, like megalithic structures, it's rife with this type of data. And it just blows my mind that, you know, sometimes I'll read comments on your YouTube channel and people are like, people still believe we went to the moon?
Yeah. They've been watching too much Bart Sibrel.
Or people believe that we live on a flat Earth, you know, or flat, whatever the hell that is, you know. And
that's fading away, thankfully. Yeah.
I don't know, man. There's still a huge movement, and like, you know, I'm happy to talk with people like that for them to prove their point.
Right.
But they have to also talk with people like us and understand that there's so much data that proves we're not on a flat Earth, and that we did go to the moon, and we're still in space, and we're still sending tons of probes beyond Earth to go to other planets and see other things. And I think in the next documentary, we're gonna like cover a lot of these things in a chronological order again to prove a point that we have been into space with certain possible vehicles that are UFO-like, and there's just a barrage of evidence that shows there's a cover-up actively going on even today.
I mean, I think that's I think that's a great way to end this interview. And I think this was a great introductory interview, because I would like to do many more discussions with you regarding Stanley Kubrick and the moon landings and just so many other topics. So if you guys are willing to come on for future interviews, I would really appreciate that. Would you guys be up to that?
Oh, definitely.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Anytime, man.
Well, listen, guys. The film is Secret Space UFOs Part 1. If you want to see real NASA Apollo moon footage and imagery just torn apart and see what they were really trying to cover up, watch that film. This was a great interview, and it was great to meet you, Cary, for the first time. I wish you nothing but the best. We need you to stay healthy, because we have to take over this documentary game and give people the truth for once, and not just make it a money scheme with the same old stuff. So
that's
just
right.
Stay healthy for me, please. Thank you for being on. Darcy, buddy, thank you very much. Guys,
thank you.
Check out their film, and thank you guys for being on.
Thanks, Ben. It's been great.
Great to have you.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, so there you have it. And real quick, before you jump off, I forgot to ask Luna Cognita during the interview whether he thought his sudden health issues, which came on so suddenly and to a perfectly healthy gentleman, did he think that it was normal, that he had multiple strokes, or that someone or something may have caused him to have all of these sudden health issues? And so I asked him this through text message after the interview, and his response was, quote, "I have certainly wondered the same thing myself overall this time, because the doctors even have absolutely no clue why I was having these strokes when I was perfectly healthy before, and they didn't know if it was somehow tied to heart problems that I'm also now having. For some reason, they have had me doing all of these heart tests now, but to have 4 strokes in a row are very bizarre, to the point that the doctors are even talking about it being something that could be written up later on in medical journals, because they simply have no answers as to why these health issues suddenly hit me. The doctors simply have no explanation." He ended by saying, quote, "It's just all so bizarre as to why it's happened to me. But however it happened, it did have the desired effect of shutting me down, really. So, like I say, I still question what could possibly be the explanation for this, just like the doctors do."